Hello everyone, in this video I will discuss about transducer. Basically I will discuss about the definition of transducer, that is what actually a transducer is, and I will discuss about different types of transducer, how we can categorize the transducer. So transducer is basically a device which converts one form of energy into another form of energy. For a simple example, if you have seen the battery, what it does, it converts the chemical energy into electrical energy. By using the battery, you are able to produce light. So it converts one form of energy into another form of energy. And another example of that transducer is microphone. When you talk, what happens? The sound wave generates. So when you talk, basically the sound wave they hit at the diaphragm of the microphone. So diaphragm is basically a thin membrane. So when it vibrates, it generates electric signal or equivalent audio signal. So here we are able to convert the acoustic signals into equivalent electric signals. So this is the example of transducer. Another example, if you have seen your cell phone, you are able to connect to your friend through cell phone. So when you talk, what happens? There is one MEMS sensor and integrated circuit inside your cell phone. So what happens? It converts when you talk, the acoustic or sound wave or audio signal generates. So what happens? That MEMS sensor and IC circuit, what they do, they convert that signal into a discrete signal. So your phone's antenna, that converts that discrete signal into electromagnetic waves. Then, and those electromagnetic waves are received by the cell phone towers, and finally they transmit it to your friend's phone. And in your friend's phone, it again get converted from the electromagnetic wave to the audio signal, where your friend hears your voice. So antenna, basically what they do, they convert either electromagnetic wave into a audio signal or any form which is understood by you, and or it converts audio signal into electromagnetic wave. And another example is Bourdon tube pressure gauge. If you have I think already done the experiment using Bourdon tube pressure gauge. It is used to measure the pressure. So what happens when the fluid enters through this tube? Because of the fluid pressure, the tube expands. So in the free end, there is one link and sector and pinion. Pinion is a smaller gear arrangement. So what happens when the fluid pressure increases? The free end of the tube, it deflects. So because of the movement at the free end, the link moves. So because of the movement of link, the sector also moves as it is attached to the link. So when the sector moves, the pinion rotates, and there is one pointer which is attached to the pinion. So because of the rotation of the pinion, the pointer also rotates. So according to the magnitude of pressure, the point deflects. So it is one type of transducer where it converts the pressure energy into displacement. Because of the displacement of the pointer, you are able to read what is the pressure value. So these are few examples of transducer. Also in your day-to-day life, if you have seen that fluorescent lamp that converts electrical energy into light energy. So these are few examples of transducer. So now I think you understand what is transducer. Basically it converts one form of energy into another form of energy. So the input energy may be of any type. It may be a mechanical energy, or maybe a light energy, or chemical energy, or thermal energy, or electrical energy, or sound energy, or electromagnetic energy. So basically we uh, convert that energy into a suitable form using a transducer. So in another definition, we can call the transducer is a device which converts non-electrical quantity into electrical quantity. So the inverse transducer, generally the transducer which converts electrical energy into non-electrical quantity, we call it as inverse transducer. So next we'll discuss about different types of transducer. So the process by which it converts one form of energy into another form of energy, we call it transduction. So during that transduction, based on the power requirement, we have categorized the transducer into active transducer and passive transducer. So active transducer, what they do, so to convert one form of energy into another form of energy, whatever energy is required by the transducer, so it collects that energy from the physical phenomena or from the thing which it is going to measure. So it doesn't require any external power source. So for that reason we call it a self generating type transducer. But what happens in case of passive transducer? They are not self generating. To convert one form of energy into another form, they require some amount of external power source or externally power input or additional power input. So that's why we call it as passive transducer. So the examples of passive transducer are resistance thermometer, potentiometric device, differential transformer, photoemission cell, etc. And the examples of active transducer are thermocouple, thermopile, electric pickup, etc. So to discuss about the active transducer in details, suppose consider a thermocouple. So thermocouple is basically consists of two different wires, and the two different wires are connected at two ends, and they formed two different junctions. So what happens? The thermocouple is basically used to measure the temperature. So what happens? The temperature of the device or the body of which we are interested to measure, we connect the one end of thermometer to that point. So that point is known as hot junction, because in that point we are going to measure the temperature. We don't know what is the temperature, we are going to measure the temperature at that point. And the other end we connect it to that point whose temperature we already know. So that is the reference junction, or we can call it its cold junction. So what happens in the hot junction or hot end? Because of the temperature in that end, energy content is more. So because of the high energy content, the electrons, they get energized. So what they do, just like your you can say your fluid. In case of fluid, what happens? The fluid moves from high pressure to low pressure. In the similar case, here the electron moves from the high energy end to the low energy end. So the heated junction, so the electron moves from the heated junction towards the cold junction or the reference junction. So what happens in this way? The heated junction forms a positive energy source, and you can say it as anode, and the cold junction it forms as becomes a negative energy source, or you can call it as cathode. So in this way the current develops or flows. So if we will connect a voltmeter, so it can get the voltage reading equivalent to the temperature of the heated junction. So in this way it gets the energy from the hot junction to convert or to do the transduction process. We don't supply any kind of energy externally. So this is one example of active transducer. We'll study about all these type of transducer in details. Here I am just describing you different types of transducer. So next category is based on the type of output. So based on the type of output, we can call it as analog transducer or we can call it as digital transducer. So analog transducer, what they do, they convert the input quantity or phenomena or energy into the output which is in the analog form. Analog means continuous function of time. Here you can see the black curve. This black one is the analog signal. So it is varying continuously with the time. So every time duration, every time period you can get the data. For every time period you can get the data. But if we will get the data in the form of digital output or in the form of pulse, then we call that type of transducer to digital transducer. In your you have seen the analog or digital type watch. So here in the one analog type watch, what happens, that pointer which detects the time, it moves continuously. But what happens in the digital watch, it shows the time like a pulse, like suppose it's 11 am, then 11:01, then 11:02, like this. So in the red graph or curve, you can see it is a digital output. It is giving the output in the form of pulse. So when you get the data in the form of analog signal or when you get the analog output from the transducer, then we call it as analog transducer. When we get the digital data, we call it as digital discrete data, we call it as digital transducer. Next is based on the conversion. So according to that, we call it as primary transducer or secondary transducer. So what happens in case of primary transducer? Primary transducer change any form of quantity into a mechanical signal. But secondary transducer, what they do, they convert the mechanical signal into the electrical signal. So for example, in case of Bourdon tube pressure gauge, I have already told you, because of the pressure, this pointer gives a displacement. So according to the displacement, you measure the what is the pressure value. So it converts the pressure into mechanical displacement. So it acts as a primary transducer. But in here we don't get any electric output. But if we'll get the output in the form of other voltage or current or anything, so that type of transducer is called secondary transducer. Suppose in case of Bourdon tube pressure gauge, if we'll remove this link and this sector, pinion and pointer, and instead of that if we'll fix a LVDT at the free end. So LVDT is basically a linear variable differential transformer. So what LVDT do? So what happens if we'll attach the LVDT at the free end? So LVDT basically consists of a core which is at the center and one primary winding or primary coil which is attached at the middle and two secondary winding at its two sides which are connected in series. So when the core moves, it produces electromagnetic field. So when the because of the deflection at the free end, because of the deflection, this core will move. So when the core will move, the EMF produced in this winding, when it is nearer to this winding, the EMF produced in this winding will be more than this winding. So when it will move backward direction, the EMF produced in the first winding will be more than in the second winding. So in this way, because of the movement of core, there is a difference in electromagnetic force. So that difference in electromagnetic force is generates a difference in voltage which is read by the voltmeter. So here we convert the displacement into an electric signal or voltage. So this is basically a secondary transducer. Next is based on the electrical principle involved. We have categorized it as either a variable resistance type or a variable inductance type or a variable capacitance type or voltage generating type or voltage divider type. So from the variable resistance type, it is in the variable resistance category. The examples are strain and pressure gauge, thermistor, resistance thermometers, photoconductive cell, etc. In the variable inductance type, the examples are linear voltage differential transformer, that is LVDT, reluctance pickup, eddy current gauge. In the variable capacitance type, the examples are capacitor microphone, pressure gauge, dielectric gauge. And in the voltage generating type, the examples are thermocouple and photovoltaic cell, for piezoelectric pickup, rotational motion tachometer. Tachometer is used to measure the RPM. And voltage divider type, it is potentiometer, position sensor, and pressure actuated voltage divider. So all these types of transducer you will study in details in the next class. So in this video I have just discussed about the definition of transducer and different types of transducer, that is how can we categorize the transducer.